Besmeerbat, Wild, Manfeskadus, and Damlak. Besmeerbat, Wild, Manfeskadus, and Damlak. Besmeerbat, Wild, Manfeskadus, and Damlak. I mean, yes, good morning, anyone who's engaging with this. Yeah, my name's Holly Mariam, and I'm here reading a chapter a day from the Ethiopian Bible. We've just started this about. I'm brand new to TikTok to set up this account, but it felt like the most appropriate place to do it. I might bounce them to my YouTube account as well, but for some reason, TikTok felt like the right platform, even though I wasn't on the platform before. So, reading from the Dr. Lewis Spencer translation of the Ethiopian Bible, which is the complete Bible, so it includes all of the traditional texts from the Old Testament and the New Testament, as well as the texts that were left out of the kind of the more, the King James Bible version, which only has 66 books. This has 110 books, so it's the complete Bible, not just the missing sections, which a lot of the translations are. So, Genesis chapter 3, so I'll go straight in. And the serpent had been cunning above every beast of the field which Yahweh God has made. And he says to the woman, Is it true that God has said, You do not eat from the tree of the garden? And the woman says to the serpent, from the fruit of the trees of the garden we eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, You do not eat nor touch it, lest you die. And the serpent says to the woman, Dying you do not die. For God knows that in the day of your eating of it, your eyes have been opened, and you have been as God, knowing good and evil. And the woman sees that the tree is good for food, and that is pleasant to the eyes, and the tree is desirable to make one wise. And she takes from its fruit and eats, and she also gives some to her husband with her, and he eats. And the eyes of both of them are opened, and they know that they are naked, and they sew fig leaves and make girdles for themselves. And they hear the sound of Yahweh God walking up and down in the garden at the breeze of the day. And the man and his wife hide themselves from the face of Yahweh in the midst of the tree of the garden. And Yahweh God calls to man and says to him, Where are you? And he says, I have heard your sound in the garden, and I am afraid, for I am naked, and I hide myself. And he says, Who has declared that you are naked? Have you eaten for the tree of which I have commanded you not to eat? And the man says, The woman who you placed with me, she has given me from the tree, and I ate. And Yahweh God says to the woman, What is this you have done? And the woman says, The serpent has caused me to forget, and I ate. And Yahweh God says to the serpent, Because you have done this, cursed are you above all the livestock, and above every beast of the field. On your belly you go, and dust you eat, for all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He bruises your head, and you bruise his heel. To the woman he said, Multiplying, I multiply your sorrow and your conception. You will bear children in sorrow, and your desire is towards your man or husband, and he or will rule over you. And to the man he says, Because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and eat from the tree concerning which I have charged you, saying, Do not eat, cursed is the ground on your account. In the sorrow you ate it for all the days of your life, and it brings forth thorn and bramble for you. And you have eaten the herb of the field by the sweat of your face, and you eat bread until you return to the ground. For you have been taken out of it, for dust you are, and to dust you return. And the man calls his wife's name Eve, for she is the mother of all things. And Yahweh God makes a coats of skin for the man and his wife, and clothes them. And Yahweh God says, Behold, the man was as one of us, and to the knowledge of good and evil. And now, lest he send down his hand, he has also taken from the tree of life and eaten, and lived for all time. And Yahweh God sends him forth from the garden of Eden to serve the ground for which had been taken. Indeed, he casts out the man and causes the cherubim to dwell in the east of the garden of Eden, and the sword of flame swirling around to guard the way of the tree of life. For these few words I give thanks. Here endeth the reading. Blessed love, yet a Barak Fakir. Yeah, it's quite a difficult passage, some of the things that are being talked about in there. in terms of, God's punishment for man and woman, disobeying his orders. God said, "Do not eat from the tree," and then the serpent deceived Eve, and she ate from the tree, gave Adam some food to eat from the tree, and then the curses that God puts on Adam and Eve because of that disobeying. And it's quite difficult to read, particularly verse 16, when he says to the woman, because of your sin, you shall be given to the man and become a servant in all the days. And that verse, Genesis 3:16, has been used to justify, the subservience of women and patriarchal societies, and basically try to justify that women are lesser than the man. And that's been, since the days of, early days of Bible, that verse has been used to try to justify women not having equal rights, basically. Um, but there are arguments against that. God didn't want that to be the state of Adam and Eve, because the serpent deceived Eve in that space, and he acknowledged that the serpent deceived. So he didn't want that inequality to be the natural way. And actually, when you think about us as Christians, Tiwahido, believing in Jesus, and Jesus is the new way. He became new laws, he became new life, he became new covenants, and wiped away those old sins of Adam. Um, so I think it's hard to justify that continuation. It's a punishment on Eve in that time, but I don't believe that that's a continual punishment for all eternity, because that's why we believe in Jesus, Jesus Christos, because he was the new way and he wiped away those old sins. So to use verse 3:16 to try to justify patriarchal societies and unequal treatment of women in society, I believe that's a misinterpretation, and I'm not the only one to believe so. Really, there's other arguments against that as well, but it wasn't the way that God wanted the relationship to be. It was a punishment in that time, but it's not an eternal punishment. So I know ones have their opinions on these things again, but I'm given my overstanding of these things, really. But yeah, there's a lot going on in there in terms of, when God's given us an instruction, be careful not to listen to the instructions of others that contradict, the God's teaching. Do you know what I mean? Because God was very clear to not eat from that tree, but then someone else comes along and deceives. So there's a lot of things in here about temptation, about the will of us rather than the will of God. In the Tiwahido Church, we fast, every Wednesday, every Friday, and then all the feast days, fasting days that we got, Abay Siom and others, we got more fasting days than any other church in the world. So that kind of restrainment, in terms of sacrifice, self-sacrifice, is all part of this same chapter, this same narrative of not being led into temptation and actually having some self-control and some self-will, which isn't easy. Do you know what I mean? It's not easy. Um, but that is all part of that same tradition and teaching. So yeah, that's my overstanding and my reflection, and I'll end it here. But everyone have a blessed day. Listening to this, as I say, I'm recording this for myself and then put it up there. But anyone engaging this, I wish you a blessed day, and God willing, blessed love, day will be fruitful, and then more breath tomorrow. All right, blessed love, have a blessed one. God bless.